Good morning and welcome to the new episode of Dr. Lamba's Awakening Call. Judicial reviews are very common now, but what's amazing is that nobody till now had ever prosecuted a politician for making a promise. Politicians and prostitutes, promise you heaven on earth. And if you look at the pre-poll promises made by the candidates, you would find that if those promises had been kept, nobody would have liked to go to heaven. They would have thought this to be the heaven. And yet, at the end of the tenure, when you conduct an audit of the promises made, you would find that in most cases, over 99% of the promises have not been kept. It's very rare that the politicians keep their promises. Prime Minister Harper in Canada kept most of his promises, so did Trump. But if you look at the overall, as I was once saying, that John Grisham as the Prime Minister made 144 promises and kept about 20. Paul Martin had a short time, but he kept only one. Justin Trudeau made more than 100 promises, kept only 5. In India, there was a promise made by the Prime Minister Indira Gandhi, Garibi Hatao. More than 50 years have passed, and it's still there, rather it's increasing, the poverty. So the promises made by the politicians are usually not kept. We have seen it in our own lifetime. But the politicians who keep their promises are revered, respected, and even after they leave their seats, they are considered with earnest sincerity as people who are really authentic. But something very strange happened in India. You see, first, before I go to that, let me tell you there are two sorts of promises. One is a promise made by a politician before the election. The second is a promise made by a politician when he has been elected. And Delhi Chief Minister Arvind Kejriwal, Premier, he made a promise. He made a promise that the people who cannot afford to pay the rents of the houses, their rents will be paid by the government. Now this was a promise like typical populist appeal. From where would the government get the money to pay the rents of the thousands of the people? Rent subsidy is one thing, but 100% exemption is another thing. Secondly, it will breed corruption because the people who are going to pay the rent, those officers, they are going to indulge in corruption. That has been seen. And you are adding something to the government work which is not the government work. Thirdly, financial. He had promised free electricity, free water, free education, everything free. The freebies are important, even here in Canada. But anyway, he did not fulfill the promise. And 6 petitioners, 5 of them tenants, 1 landlord, they filed a case against him. It creates a bother for Arvind Kejriwal. And Delhi High Court ordered that Delhi government has to take a decision on implementing the CM's promise. At a press conference, he had made the promise last year when COVID 2020 migrants were leaving that he would pay the rent for all the people who can't afford to pay the rent. And the court said that a promise made, an assurance given, a representation given by the Chief Minister amounts to an enforceable promise. The court order also noted that a reasonable citizen would believe that the Chief Minister has spoken on behalf of the government, and his solemn pledge is in fact a part of the duty of the Delhi government to stand on enforcing the promise. Now this is an extremely judicial and troubling judicial intervention. Judiciary in India is becoming very proactive, sometimes for the good reasons and sometimes for absolutely lunatic reasons. So the problem is, should the judges hold the politicians to their political promises, especially when the judiciary is struggling to keep leaders accountable for hundreds of illegal acts, unconstitutional acts. The complexity of the democracy, the resource limitations, and the demands of the political marketplace are such that the politicians always overpromise and they never keep them. For example, you remember I talked of the Garibi Hatao movement, or mistaken notion of getting 15 lakh rupees in everybody's account. But then those were the promises made before they became the Prime Minister, Indira and Modi. Kejriwal's promise was not made as an election manifesto, but it was made to reverse the course of a human tragedy. So there are two differences. The promise made in a political manifesto is not an enforceable contract, because they can take a plea that the rules don't permit it, they were not aware of it. Hundreds of excuses can be touted up. But when you are the Premier, when you are the Chief Minister, you are the head of the government, you make a promise, then you are aware of the implications of that promise. Point is that are promises a contract or not? Now I had said prostitutes. They render a service and they are paid for that. And there have been cases when the people have used the service of prostitutes and just either beaten them or run away or not paid. So they hired their own security guard people called gundas to get that. But legally they are enforceable promises. Now promises need not be a written contract. It can be a verbal promise. The marriage is a promise, it's an undertaking to look after each other. And that's why there is a law in India, the restitution of the conjugal rights. When the husband leaves a wife, or the wife leaves a husband, it's a breach of promise of living together. But even that's being now subjected to a court intervention. The case has been filed. Whether the court should order husband and wife to live together and the restoration of conjugal right, is it not violation of the right of freedom? If that's a right of freedom, then the Kejriwal can also say, well, he made it in to assuage, to apply the band-aid, and it was never meant to be a full treatment. But then the High Court has said it, and the only option for him, judicial option for him, is to go to the Supreme Court. Failing which, he has to request Modi for help, because the money has to come from the central government. Delhi government doesn't have the money of its own. Now what happens is that lofty promises are made by the politicians. Are they bad? Ethically, they are bad. Politically, they are a part of everyday life. What the politicians do is they up the expectations among the voters, and if the voters are sensible, then there will be pressure on them to deliver. Now, the question arises, are the voters sensible? And are the voters capable of putting pressure on them? Because the moment they are elected, they are not available even to the voters. In some countries, like in India, the voters hardly see their representative for a period of 4 years. In the last year they come and show their faces because the election is around the corner. Otherwise, the distance between the voters and the representative is so huge, immense among us, that the voters are not even aware whether they are living or not. Now, disappointing voters has pitfalls. Payback await them on the polling day. You remember, but then that happens in a major issues. India had emergency and Mrs. Gandhi was defeated despite all the intelligence reports. But the new governments came, and in a period of 2.5 years they had 7 governments. And the voters were really horrified because not a single promise could be kept. How can a government being in office for 3 months, 6 months deliver? So Mrs. Gandhi came back. After Rajiv Gandhi again the same thing happened. But again, people saw that no, that's not done. So Vajpayee's government came. So this sort of a thing, the lofty promises would have a payback, but provide as long as people know that those promises were doable. The people are very sensible. They understand when a promise is doable and what is not. Gribi Hatao or depositing 15 lakh rupees in each bank account that are not doable. You cannot remove poverty. Poverty is a part of economic and social order. You can reduce it. You can bridge the gap. But to say that you can remove it absolutely you are living in a fool's paradise. So making lofty promises good from one point of view, that you excite people, make them feel good for the time being, and maybe some action group, some pressure group is capable enough of bringing pressure on the politicians to perform. And when the electorate is intelligent, educated, I don't see bookish knowledge, but educated about their rights and about their expectations, then the payback can be there on the polling day. In India, this thing happened. In 2013, a public interest application was filed by some people in Supreme Court, and it was against Jayalalitha, the then Premier of Tamil Nadu. The application stated, the suit stated, that Jayalalitha was offering freebies to the voters, like Kejriwal has done, free electricity, free water, free this, free that. And Supreme Court rejected that dismiss petition. They said, well, if she is promising freebies, she is promising, but it's not an enforceable contract. However, Supreme Court did something very sensible for once. They directed the Election Commission to frame guidelines on the contents of the party manifestos, the election promises. That exercise went nowhere, as mostly it happens. Umpiring political promises is useful, but futile. It's an overreach. If in a country like India, where there are thousands of candidates, thousands, and if you look at the countrywide wholly, maybe hundreds of thousands, you cannot monitor promises made by each and every person. At the most, you can monitor the promises made by the parties, the manifestos. But even then, who are you to an umpire? I tell you one thing very interesting. I said, look here, if I'm to contest as a mayor, say, for a city, I'll make one promise and I'll be elected. And a contending mayor was with me, Hazel McCallion. She said, what would you promise? I said, I'll simply go and tell that I'll reduce the property tax by 2%. and everybody will vote. And I'll make an addition to that, that I'll reduce this property tax by 2% within period of 6 months, or I'll resign. And as a matter of good faith, I'll submit my resignation to the court, that in case my promise is not fulfilled, the resignation may be accepted. I'll be elected mayor. I'll reduce the property tax. She said, then how will you run the city? I said, simply, I'll increase the user's fee. The promise does not say that I will not increase the user's fee. I can increase electricity charges, I can increase water charges, I can increase cleaning charges, I can increase the bus fare, 101 ways. But property tax should be reduced. So this is bypassing. It's a political strategy. Of course, she said, okay, at least don't contest as long as I'm contesting. I said, don't worry, I'm telling you a way out, that you can promise anything, get and still keep a promise without suffering anything. So the exercise of promise control is useless. Political promises are meant to mislead. Let me be very frank. It's very rare as in case of Stephen Harper and case of Trump, that promises are meant to be kept. We ordinarily forget that politics is the art of the possible. And everything is possible in this world. Everything. I can make a strategy that will make even a lunatic win the election. I don't want to say it because lunatics mostly win the election. When politicians make impossible promises, they do so by calculating the risk and the reward. When the voters vote for them, they decide whether the risk is worth the reward. And the best thing is, for the voters, it should be bilateral, not enforceable agreement. Court should stay out of it. Judicial review of the promises of politicians will only add to the issue, because those are much beyond the scope of judicial life. They are not enforceable promises. Even Kejriwal's promise was a statement which you can say, well, if he is intelligent enough, which I doubt, of course, that this promise was made on certain conditions. We made a promise and then some conditions always apply. Here also the conditions apply. And then the interest of the landlord and the tenants are not the same. So how come that 5 tenants and 1 landlord combined has to file the petition? That only shows that there was some ulterior purpose in that, joining forces against the government. Or maybe it was a political exercise taken by a political party to put Kejriwal in hot water, which he may deserve or may not deserve, is something different. But I repeat, politics is the art of possible. And you always promise, but the promises should be kept. It's an ethical part. It's not a legal aspect. It doesn't come under judicial purview. It comes under the purview of morality and ethics. So, this action of the Supreme Court of India, High Court of Delhi, is absolutely unjustified. And public should at least note one thing, that the promises are made to be broken. They are made to mislead. They are made to show you a view of heaven which is not going to be there. And that sense of realization will make you feel better. Thank you.